Will you remark? Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon.
Oops, good afternoon, sir.
Tomorrow, I will have the privilege of bringing up a school from my district to visit the Capitol. And on those days, it's really rewarding to have the opportunity to be their senator and to bring that youth and energy not only to the Senate, but here to Hartford, to this Capitol. And it's youthful and energetic because it's hopeful. It's all about opportunity. It's about the future of Connecticut. And what I love is to be able to bring the students in and talk to them about what we do here. And they're all excited because tomorrow means so much to them. And that same feeling of excitement and opportunity should mean the same to us. And what we do here are many things. But I don't think there's anything more important to not only represent what we do, but to be the collective embodiment of the public will, which is our budget. It sets the game plan. It says to our citizens where we want to go with our future. And what was presented to me was a document filled with broken promises. Broken promises that, in my opinion, extinguish that hope and optimism that Connecticut families want and deserve. We start with the broken promise on a constitutional spending cap. As we've just heard Senator McLaughlin eloquently explain, over 80% of the people of Connecticut want a spending cap. And it makes sense, because we got to also step back and look at how that became a cap. It became a cap because we implemented an income tax. And in order to put a check and balance on unbridled spending, the citizens in return wanted a cap. Our constituents. It's been in existence since 1992. But with this budget, we're going to blow through that cap. We're not going to compare apples to apples, because if we're going to take and put some funding on the side, then we need to look at the same budget we have right now and take the expenditures out and put them on the side so that we look fairly apples to apples. And even if we do that, we still exceed the spending cap. I can tell you numerous times in every town I represent, people have urged me, don't break the cap. It's the people's cap, and we need to respect it. There's also the broken promise on new taxes. This budget has $300 million of new taxes, new revenue. There's the broken promise to borrow for ongoing operational expenses. There's a $750 million gap bond in here. Then there's the hospitals. Let's look at what we do on the hospital side. We're going to make a significant and sizable cut to hospitals, which will reduce healthcare quality and access, eliminate jobs, good paying jobs for middle-class Connecticut families right here in our districts and shred a safety net which many people depend upon, most especially those who do not qualify for Medicaid and have no insurance. It's hard to believe that this policy decision is occurring within the context of the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, whose sole purpose was to improve and increase health care access and quality. But the Affordable Care Act is not just an insurance policy. It goes far beyond that. And while we're creating policies and health care coverage through an exchange, what good is an insurance policy if there's no providers available to deliver the quality medical services that our constituents deserve? And then there's the one-time sweeps. We're going to take $3.5 million from the Tobacco and Health Trust Fund, whose purpose was part of the settlement to encourage anti-smoking campaigns, to make sure that people understand the dangers of smoking and the impact on their health. And we're going to redirect that to the general fund. Then there's another $1 million we're going to take away from the Probate Court Administration Fund. And what does that do? Probate courts are the state's court that deals with family issues, children's issues, and senior issues. It's the court where people can go where they don't need a lawyer to be heard. It's also the court that helps those of our citizenry that can't, for one reason or another, help themselves. They're probably the most vulnerable in our court population, and we're going to sweep that and take the extra funds, a dedicated fund, and put that to the general fund. And then there's another $35 million that's going to be taken out of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Account and the Clean Energy Finance and Investment Authority. And once again, this is funds that have been dedicated to make sure that we have a clean environment, that we have clean air and water, and to encourage investment in renewable energy sources, so that not only do we clean up what we have, but to make sure that our environment going forward is cleaner. But this is a policy decision to take monies that are dedicated to that purpose, to sweep them and put them into the general fund. And then lastly, there's the Special Transportation Fund. Over the biennium, we're going to sweep $109 million that taxpayers pay at the gas pump. The promise was that the funds were going to be used for roads, bridges, and infrastructure. But we're not going to use them for that. And I remember a year ago when we had the debate over the gas tax, when we only capped it, there was significant opposition. Our party was criticized because we were taking money out of road safety and infrastructure. But now we're going to take those funds that have been put into that special transportation fund and we're going to sweep it to the general fund. And if you live in southern Connecticut, think about how we could use those dollars for things like rail and commuter transportation improvements. I know when you look up the Naugatuck Valley, the Waterbury line. I know that when we decided to, I use the word we, the state of Connecticut decided to move Fast Track, the busway from New Britain to Hartford, that took valuable resources away from other projects like increasing rider capacity on the Waterbury line. Everyone knows in Fairfield County that when the accident occurred recently on Metro North, 95 was a virtual parking lot, as was the Merritt Parkway, which was just evidence what commuter rail can do to alleviate the congestion on 95 and the Merritt Parkway in Fairfield County. But do we look at trying to increase ridership on the Waterbury line? No, not so much. But yet that's where we have some of our most chronic unemployment. In Connecticut, we have unemployment of 8%. Nationally, it's 7.5%. In my hometown of Stratford, it's 8.4%. Bridgeport is an astounding 12%, and Waterbury 12.9%. So when we talk about putting people and Connecticut families back to work, why aren't we looking at ways to open up jobs in Lower Fairfield County, in Hartford, in New Haven, in New York, for people that live in the corridor from Bridgeport to Hartford, and give them the opportunity to get to those jobs? Lastly, and not lastly, but the next point is that the budget itself is built on a 6% revenue projection. And that's really a faulty assumption. And there's two areas. One, it's hopeful that it can reap the same benefit it did last December when Washington was contemplating the elimination of the Bush tax cuts. And we saw unprecedented wealth transfers, which increased revenue, capital gains, to the state of Connecticut. That's not something that's going to occur every December. Then, it's also predicated upon an economic rebound. We believe, at least the governor did when he proposed the budget, that our unemployment rate would dip to 7.4% in the first year and 6% in the second. But as I just stated, we have an 8% statewide, but in my district, there's unemployment that even exceeds that. Fred Karstensen, who heads the University of Connecticut's economic think tank, he stated that we need an 11.5% personal income growth in Connecticut to sustain the budget we're adopting. 11.5%. Yet, the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis stated that Connecticut's personal income growth rate last year was just 2%. We ranked 49th out of 50 states in this category. The only one that we beat out was South Dakota, who was plagued by drought. So when we look at the prospects of what we're doing here, we're adding new taxes. We're borrowing to meet operational expenditures. We're doing one-time sweeps of dedicated accounts. We are making aggressive projections that the economy will turn around and gambling on that economic turnaround. And this is something that 2 years ago, when I first came to the Senate, seemed to be the topic of the day. We had borrowed for ongoing expenses. We were plagued by increased taxes. And we had one-time revenue sources. Yet here we are again doing this exact same thing. And who was it? Albert Einstein said, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, it's the definition of insanity. Well, this is what we're doing. We don't think out of the box. But the problem here is that this is significant because it's setting up our future for failure. And as a father with children, young children, I didn't get involved to do that, not only to my children, but to Connecticut's children and their future. I want a hopeful Connecticut. I want a Connecticut where the kids that are born here grow up here and stay here. They work here, they raise their families here. And that they enjoy not only the same quality of life, but the quality of our environment and all the quality resources that Connecticut has to offer. I don't believe this budget achieves that. I don't believe this budget gives our future that hope and excitement that I talked about when I began. I think instead it saddles the next generations with debt. It bridles our current generation with taxes, which kills jobs. It chases good-paying middle-class jobs like those in the hospital area out of our state. And it really takes away what I think is what people want. And that's a belief that tomorrow is going to be better today than today, so when they get up, they're hopeful that it will be. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you. Will you remarks?